And we're live.
Okay, good afternoon and welcome to the March Council Committee Chairs meeting. And we have our standard agenda. I'm not seeing it, but I don't think there is anything significant. But we start with our committee reports, and that would be Councilmember Evans, you'd be up first.
Thank you, Madam President. I do have a meeting this week, Tuesday, to talk further about finance with Budget Director. But you should have seen the legislation. Nothing major. I would just draw your attention to a couple of pieces of legislation. One of which is a piece of legislation related to the FOIA process and that being moved into the Corporations Council's office from the communications office that was there that might be of interest to people. And then there's one piece of legislation that we've had before, and I'll get further clarification on it from everyone because I'm sure there might be questions on it. And that was the retiring of some bond issues that sometimes questions come up around that. So those were the main things that kind of caught my attention. There's some other pieces that folks may have questions on that I can inquire about tomorrow if so. I know we also still have agenda review, so those were the main things. The other thing I'll mention from a financial perspective, which I'm sure council will be happy about because we did send a letter to our federal representatives, was that the House passed the $1.9 trillion stimulus package. It heads over to the Senate. The $15 minimum wage is not in there, but 1.9 trillion, it is huge. The biggest items, just if anybody cares, is the $1,400 per person checks, and then the expansion of jobless benefits, which I think is about 240 billion, and then some tax credits for parents and low income workers, which is about 130 billion. Some health insurance subsidies at 65 billion, and some housing assistance, which I'll be interested to see how that affects us in Rochester. And that's about 40 billion. But the thing that I'm most excited about is the aid to municipalities, which we put in that letter that we wanted to see. So I hope that we'll get a significant cut of that, and we'll see if that helps our budget. I will say that a majority, I saw a poll that said something like 70% of Americans were in favor of this. So I'm hoping that it passes quickly so people can get relief. So those are the main things that I talked about. And I'll send out, I don't have anything more on the convention center than what I said before. And I'll send out any updates on that because I may have to get off a little early, but that's all I really had.
Hey, Malik, also in that package, or that came a part of that, was that PPP that they were opening to the micro businesses.
Yes.
Right? That was they're actually literally cut out a period of time where they were allowing non-traditional PPP recipients like sole proprietors, et cetera.
Yep.
So that's pretty big too, especially for a lot of our mom and pop shops.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. That's a huge deal because the last PPPs, to your point, it was very hard for sole proprietors to get access to that. So that's going to help. So yeah, I think it's. I mean, it's not perfect. I know a lot of people wanted the $15 minimum wage, but I mean, I think that it's for what we see our people going through right now. I mean, I'm sure all of you know people personally who have lost jobs. I know I do. It's important that they move on this quickly, and I think it might help our overall budget situation. I mean, I'm still holding my breath until it's actually passed, but I think it could be very good for us because we lost tax revenue, sales tax revenue. This may help us get some of that back. So keep my fingers crossed.
Malik, is the administration making any assumptions about if it passes, how much aid would come to the city, or there's just no way of knowing yet?
There's no way of knowing yet. And so far, Chris and the budget stuff that we put in is based upon not getting this. So we'll see, right? Yeah.
From what I've heard, the aid could be significant that we would get, like upwards of 150 million. Because it's based on the CDBG formula, right?
I don't know. I don't want to jinx it. I don't know. I'm scared to even fathom a number until we until it happens. So, but yeah, but I mean, it looks good. But it's still got to pass, and you guys know anything can happen. So, the other thing I'll say, and I don't know how, I mean, there was an analysis done, and someone said that they think it would reduce poverty by almost 30% in 2021, and will move 12 million Americans above the poverty line. I hope that's the case, but that's from the Center on Poverty and Social Policy at Columbia. I mean, I think they're pretty reputable, but if that's the case, I think that for anyone that wants to see economic opportunity, this is something to get behind. So,
Malik, just one other question in terms of, you mentioned the piece of legislation about all the bonding, which it seems like we've basically just come under in projects. Do you have a sense of why? I can ask this in agenda review too, but why there's upwards of 3 different years of projects all bundled together right now? Is that normal for how this is done?
I think it is, but that is a question. It's funny you said that. I literally have that same question written down for Chris to ask him. But I think the last one we did, it was structured in a similar fashion. But that's a question that I definitely will ask tomorrow.
Okay.
Just a quick comment, and if I'm wrong, and I apologize. So, and I haven't had a chance to go through all of the finance, but if normally what we're doing when we're refinancing debt is to get a lower rate. So is that what we're doing with this one here that we're talking about here?
I thought, yeah, I got to ask Chris, Mike. I thought we were just retiring the debt, but I'll get clarification on that.
Okay, thank you, sir.
No problem.
Councilmember Gruber.
Yes, you'd like me to go before NBD?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, NBD is nice.
I just put the agenda in the chat, Madam President.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, Mitch, don't go nowhere because it ain't gonna take long. We've only got 3 items in NBD this month. The meeting is sometime this week, usually probably be Wednesday or Thursday. We only have 3 items, so the standard sale of real estate. We've got we're approving the RURA budget, and what's really cool is that we're looking at redesign of the planning for the housing trust fund. So I'll have some more details on that later. But making good progress, doing some good stuff.
Okay, thank you. That was quick.
That was a good song, bro.
That was New Edition. I watched that New Edition movie again the other night. Now, Councilmember Gruber.
I'm sorry. That was my New Edition ring. You got to stand that ring. Can you stand the ring? Can y'all stand it? We got good times, but can you stand the bad time?
All right.
Sorry for the interruption.
That's all right. That's all right. Certainly. Councilmember Gruber.
Yes, and I apologize for not being on video. I will be very shortly. But in the meantime, most of the items in this month's packet are related to preventative maintenance, milling, resurfacing, pretty standard stuff. It seems like it's all located in the Northwest. So I don't know, Jose, if you have any thoughts or questions about that, but there's a lot of stuff in the Northwest in this packet. And then there's a really big, what seems like a fairly complicated introductory around the McGuire building and the Chamber building, which was brought to us a few months ago, and then it was pulled and now it's back again. So I have a lot of questions on that, but I have not had my meeting with Commissioner Jones yet. So that's really all I have to report unless there's any questions.
On the Genesee Valley Park pool, it says and plaza. What is the plaza?
Good question. My meeting with Commissioner Jones is tomorrow. I assume it's that whole neck of the woods right there off of Elmwood. And all the stuff that's kind of public facing, but I'll find out more tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you.
President Scott, one other thing I would say is introductory 73 in finance is something that I had worked on it with the director of policy, Kelly Maturko. It's linked to something we did last year when we thought scooters and e-bikes were coming. It obviously didn't happen, but it's happening potentially this year. So some code changes. It's in finance now. It's fine for it to stay there, but for Malik's sake, I'm more than happy for that to be transferred into PPW since it's work that I helped to do and it's related to Parks and Public Works.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Councilmember Vice President Lightfoot.
Yes, Madam President, thank you. Of course, I haven't had my meetings yet either, but I do want to bring it to the people's attention. Just remind folks, you probably already know, of course, because you were in the meeting, but we do have a new interim fire chief. So just want to remind folks, I want to thank Chief Jackson for the services that he did, but he was done at the end of last month. So I believe Chief Hernandez has taken on the reign of fire chief. So there also is in our packet this week, the things that the McGuire building was talked about before. I think that's probably the thing that's going to get the most questions and attention. 106, 107, 108, 109, 110. Just for purposes of Condi and Madam President, I sit on the REDCO board. So I want to have full disclosure on that. These are buildings that REDCO owned and that REDCO are now transferring, if this is approved, to the city of Rochester. We do know that our city is using a lot of space. DRIS is using a lot of space in the St. Paul building. We also know that there are huge plans for the McGuire building, which is next to the old soccer stadium. I don't know if any of you have ever been in there. I really, really encourage you to go and take a look at that facility. It's tens of thousands of square feet. And there is quite a vision for that as being a youth sports facility for our young folks. And so those are the ones that are probably going to be receive the most attention, have the most questions. And I plan to meet with Commissioner Torres as well as I'll probably end up meeting with Baya Muhammad as well too, just to just get any more details that I may be able to share with you concerning those particular items. But other than that, and that's a lot through 106 through, excuse me one second, 106, I believe, through 110. It's quite a bit of information there. So quite a bit.
Sorry, well, I misspoke. I thought that was in PPW, but it's not.
Well, Dr. Gruber, we all make mistakes.
I'm learning that. About myself.
So, but yeah, that's a big deal. It's a lot happening. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of resources being transferred. And so I'm sure there'll be tons of questions concerning that. But I'll have more to follow at our agenda review.
Thank you. Okay. Excuse me. So now on to our boards and commissions. Councilmember Evans, I think you said there was nothing further on the War Memorial.
Yeah, nothing new for Convention Center other than what I told you guys last time. They have been doing the COVID stuff, so that's only been the main activity, but that's been pretty active over there.
Councilmember Melendez, the Board of Health.
Yes, thanks, Madam President. Just two main things from the Board of Health. One, they did start to hire for addiction services. They created a new section under the county health department that will focus on outreach in communities. So a lot of that will be hitting the city of Rochester. They're hiring 6 people that will do outreach work in the community. And then the second piece, I did send an email while we were all here on this call with an update on the vaccine. This was from mid-February, so it's a little outdated, but I think it gives you some good context for the science behind it in case it's useful if you're engaging community members around the vaccine. So that's really it.
Thank you. Thanks. Councilmember Gruber, ABC. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that, Mitch, just when you took a big bite.
I can handle it. ABC had a wonderful conference last month, which I hope some people got a chance to see. I think they're doing a phenomenal job in taking a leadership role in some of the bigger conversations about race that we need to have as a community. Head Start continues to kind of follow the school district. And I think that we have, there's maybe the next time there's a 333 meeting, there can be a report out from the school district. I certainly wouldn't want to speak on their behalf, but I think there's certainly a lot more in-person happenings going on right now, and that I believe that follows with the ABC Head Start students as well. Then the only other thing that I would say, President Scott, is from the library board's perspective, as I said last time, they did hire a new person for the neighborhood branches. Very excited about that. And I think the libraries have reopened to the public. They all have different hours, I believe. It's all on the website. It's very well done, but they're maintaining boundaries and things related to space very well. But libraries have really proven to be more than an essential service. And they've been there for the community every step of the way, and they're open right now, serving folks every day.
Oh, glad to hear that. Great. Councilmember Harris did not have a report for the land bank, and we had just gotten their presentation last week, so we're all set with that. As far as we're not the members of the PAB, but it's one of our operations that, to just brief you, that we did meet Vice President Lightfoot and Councilmember Gruber and I met with members of the leadership and Councilmember Lupien. We met around the questions that were raised concerning the information flow about the Harris Street incident. And I think we made some headway in as much as we are working on, we will be working on developing a memorandum of understanding to specify how information will flow and what the timelines for providing that information will be. That will go a long way, I think, in smoothing out some of the concerns that were evidenced as a result of the administration response or the concern about the lack thereof about getting information. Councilmember Lupien, did you want to add something on that?
Sure. Yeah, I guess there was some back and forth, right, in a couple of our meetings, and the Corporation Counsel said that kind of he was pulled into the middle of the process, and so some of the things that he said weren't quite accurate. I think maybe 2 things. One, that the reports actually were redacted, but the information redacted was the investigation. And 2, that there was just, I think, a misunderstanding around some of the items that the PAB asked for. There was an addendum to a letter, and not everyone had read the addendum. So there was some really clearly delineated asks, and they are working on them.
And I was able to speak with Connor, well, with all of them, about my concern about their participation in the city budgeting process. And, they apologize for not complying with the deadlines and things. And I expect that we'll all work through that and be doing better on it. There's nothing to report on the ethics board. typically doesn't meet unless there's a complaint, and there hasn't been one in about, I don't know, 3 or 4 months, maybe longer. I can't, just a moment, please. We sat in on a housing housing meeting the other day, which I'm really excited about. You know, we would want to have the legislation passed to establish a housing court. There's work that needs to be done, and Council Assembly Member Bronson is very supportive of getting that in. He just wants to be clearer about what it is we're trying to do. And so there's going to be some work, and Councilmember Pio has volunteered to sort of lead our effort with that. Councilmember Pio, you want to add anything on that?
I look forward to serving and being a voice of, many different folks on there. I think it's really important that this thing does right by our constituents and everybody.
So we've been bouncing this thing around for a while. And in fact, Councilmember Patterson and I started out with this about 2 years ago, at least 2 years ago. And interestingly enough, although we thought we had made headway when we heard there was legislation out there to establish a housing court. Come to find out that legislation has been there for a long time. It just doesn't go any place. But now maybe it will. Maybe it will, since there is, I think this situation with the pandemic and with the impending evictions and just the intensity of what's going on now may give it more legs that of likelihood or possibility of passing than it had when we first started working on this. The other thing I want to talk about, though, with housing, and we have not gotten back together about it, is this whole issue with good cause eviction. I received a note the other day about it again from the tenant union, and unlike the typical bureaucrat, I don't look for a reason to say no. I look for a reason to say yes. And I'm looking for a reason to say yes to get that legislation in. And I'm not getting enough affirmation, I'll put it that way. So I don't know if we need to do additional research. I'm not sure what it is.
President Scott.
Yes.
Councilmember Gruber and Melendez and I have been kind of like digging into the legislation, and we have a meeting on the 5th with Mark Moyo to kind of look into it a little bit more, and he's got some concerns.
For which piece?
For good
For
cause.
the good cause or what?
Yeah, for good cause.
Okay,
So we can report back on that.
that would be great. That would be
Also
great.
I had a question about the housing court, because I know on the call that we were on, there was kind of like some people that volunteered for a subgroup to kind of work on it. Is
Mhm.
that what you were talking about with Councilmember Pio?
I guess I got the email or something, and he said he'd be willing to do it. And yeah,
Okay, because yeah, I think there might be a number of us on that subgroup as well.
I'm sorry, say
I
again?
just didn't know if it was two. I said, I think there's a number of us on that subgroup, but I didn't know if it was two different efforts or if it was the same thing.
It's the
It
same
may
thing.
be the same thing.
It is.
Okay.
Okay.
Just for my info, Mary, will you be on that as well?
Yeah, I put my name in.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thanks.
Okay. And Councilmember Gruber, so you are working on the whole piece or just the piece regarding the good cause?
No, I am joining Mary and Miguel for this meeting with Mark. I think to the question that you had asked before, I find it hard to believe that there isn't somehow a connection between whatever happens with the establishment of a housing court and whatever the evolution of a good cause legislation in Rochester may be. So I'm really curious to see how we can, if you're looking for a reason to say yes, I think that housing court gives us hopefully some opportunities to do some new things and to have more local control over some of the big questions related to housing. And I hope the two things can be linked.
So maybe that's where I kept getting stuck. I think that may be it. That in order for us to actually effectuate good cause eviction, the actions that come as a result, or the cases that come as a result, you need a housing court. I heard something along those lines. There's something like that was.
You don't need it because we already actually have good cause eviction on regulated units. So this is really the expansion of it. I think it could change the way we adjudicate those cases. So I think there's a link, but it's not a stipulation. Does that make sense?
I don't think it's mandatory. I think the issue is that there is no current, it's like with most things, we could make laws, but we will not have the ability to really enforce them that well. There's not a mechanism to do that in a particularly aggressive way, versus after housing court, there's actually a mechanism built in to be able to do some more enforcement.
I'm going to push back just because we do have good cause now and it is taken care of through the courts. But can you clarify how what you're talking about would be different?
Yeah, Mary, it's the conversation you and I have had like 15 times. I'm talking about like the Fair Housing Commission in Philadelphia. I'm talking about dedicated housing courts, different places. The good cause eviction that you're referring to locally is what happens on HUD regulated housing across the country. We don't have a local mechanism to enforce local laws related to good cause, and a housing court will allow us to do that. That's the only point that I'm trying to make.
Yeah, I guess I disagree with that, but that's okay. We can move on.
Well, the other sort of foundational concern for me is the tenant union is working really, really hard on this, and they have been for a while. And obviously, they don't understand that situation the way you two just described it either. So there is a gap somewhere. And I'd like for us to sort of align them and get more clarity. If that is not the case, then we need to know what is. If it is, then we need to make sure people know that it is. So we need to get that kind of understanding and alignment.
President
Please.
Scott, do you have interest in coming to that meeting on the 5th?
Perhaps.
Okay, I can send you the information.
Thank you. Okay. Did that cover everything today? No? Yes?
I sent you something in the chat, dear Madam President. I don't know if you captured that.
Sorry.
No, it's
Councilmember Pio, he has a meeting.
Oh, okay.
President Scott,
Yes.
around boards and
203.
commissions. Oh,
I'm sorry, 203.
yeah, I didn't know if
Okay, that's Pio.
Yeah, I was just going to speak to a little bit of that so I can clear up maybe some questions that folks may have concerning that. I know me and Councilmember Melendez both were assigned by President Scott to the Executive 203 Working Group. There were no reports per se for that group because all of the minutes of those meetings were posted online. From my understanding, if you go to the city website, Executive 203, you will see all of the minutes of the meetings that we had with the working group. Myself and Councilmember Melendez didn't really give extensive input. We gave, of course, we gave some, but a lot of the work there was more so for the UCLM, the Race Commission person, and the PAB who were there, because they all had reports. So a lot of their reports were aligning or not aligning, depending on, what point of view we're looking at with the whole Executive 203. So a lot of the conversation, and Miguel Melendez, I don't know, did he step off? But a lot of the conversation was mostly just navigating through the various reports that were presented, as well as what the overall intent of Executive 203 was. If the minutes from the last meeting are not there, I can make sure that they get posted there. I didn't look to see if the last ones was there, but I'll make sure that I'll send a note and make sure that they're posted there. So all of that information was public. As far as our process, we did just had a recently, the whole entire Executive 203 since the draft came out is public and will continue to be public. There is no, the only drop off point for public comment will be after Madam President decides when our public comment process will be. Up until that point, the public will continually have the ability to have input. We just did a telephone town hall meeting on Sunday. I believe over 10,000 people were called. Over 2,000 people remained on the call or were on at the peak, and over 500 plus stayed on the call. That was about our call. That was for our folks who may have the digital divide, if you will. There's been numerous amount. I think the mayor and her team has been out doing numerous different groups around the topic. Of course, all of us have been given the information to share with our groups and have whatever conversations we want to have. Then after March 4th, the draft input of the draft from the community will be expired for the draft. Then at that point, they will take all of the information that they have received from the public or whatnot, come up with a final piece of legislation. That final piece of legislation will be given to Madam President. Madam President, and it also will be shared with the public. So never once will any of this stuff not be public for public view. At that point in time, that final legislation that has incorporated whatever input from the community from the draft will be public. Madam President at that point will determine what the process will be for City Council. Now, my understanding how that normally typically goes, and correct me if I'm wrong, is we'll probably table the legislation at our 16th meeting so that we are able to set up the public speaking process for the legislation. At that point, Madam President will determine what that looks like. We will probably have that session, and then we'll probably have to have a special so that we're able to meet the governor's timeline of April 1st. And so that is the information that I have been sharing with everyone. I've not been speaking on behalf of all 9 members. I've only been speaking towards the process. And that is the process. Madam President, once March 4th comes and she receives that legislation, she's in charge of the process at that point in time. All of the information has been public and will continue to be public, and the public will have input up into probably we vote on the legislation.
Yeah, that is exactly it. From the point that we receive it, it will be considered for received by council, and we then will set up a period of at least 2 weeks for to receive additional comment, whether that's with a forum or it'll be some way to ensure that people know that we have it and that we're looking to hear from them about it. And then we will have that final meeting at the end of March in order to comply with the April 1st, is it, I guess, 1st submission date. Mm-hmm.
I have a question. The feedback that comes from the public before March 4th, maybe it's 2 questions. The feedback that comes from the public before March 4th, what's the process for incorporating? I want to know what the process is for incorporating the feedback, and how will we know like how those decisions get made? And then 2, once we have it, is this feedback informing whether we vote for it or not, or will their feedback be able to be incorporated at that point as well?
So I can only speak to the first half, Madam President. Then Madam President have to speak to the second half because that the process in turns to her. The first half is, Doreen Kirkmeyer has been handling this process, right? As far as receiving the data and handling the data and how she aligns that data with the current draft. So from my understanding, she will do very similar to how they did with the 2034 plan, right? When they put the comp plan together, how they took community input there. So she's aggregating all of this data and she'll pick out the things that, are repeats or whatnot. So she's doing it real time. As that stuff comes in, it populates and she's adding it to the new final draft. So that's how the process of the draft input works. Now, I can't speak to the other half of that.
Now, what I see for the other, once it comes to us as legislation, what would typically happen with legislation, if there are changes, there are amendments. So the comments and however we get that feedback and we look at it, if there's something in there that's significantly different or that we feel strongly about, then we amend what we have.
Okay. And then in terms of the feedback for the draft, in terms of the feedback for the draft, is that working group getting back together to kind of hash out what gets put into it, or is that kind of just the mayor's decision?
Up until this point, that's a good question, Mary. Up until this point, I haven't been told. We had meetings on the book up until like the end of March or to the April, really. And so once I think more because we didn't realize we were going to get as far as we got in the work with the working group. So at this point, we haven't met again once the draft had been put forth out. So I would have to assume that would be probably done with the mayor and Doreen Kirkmeyer and her staff, which is responsible for providing us the legislation anyway.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just a quick question about that. So if there's going to be a special meeting, I'm sorry if I missed this in the process. If there's going to be a special meeting, we're going to have opportunities to have our own question. We're going to have an agenda review essentially.
Yes, but we'll get the legislation. It'll go into committee. It will be tabled, right? So while we have it, it won't just be sitting there. We will also be working with it.
And do you think it'll be like an agenda review where it's written questions, written responses, or we'll actually have a session to have conversation about it?
I'm looking forward to the latter, actually.
Great. Okay, thank you.
I just want to encourage folks while we still yet have still some time this week, of course, a few more days. And I know, Mary, you're doing some stuff. Encourage to really share and try to get as many people to get as much input as possible. This, I really hope that all of us will see this as an opportunity to really move the needle on with Executive 203. It's not the end all, of course, but it could be a major point to moving the needle with our reimagining policing for our city.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Thank you for your work on that. I know that's been trying. You guys are working through the weekends and all of that with those various meetings. So I appreciate the work that's been put on. All right, if there's nothing further.
I just had one more question. I'm sorry to hold us up, but in terms of boards and commissions, is there any update on the refugee council?
Can't hear you.
I said in terms of boards and commissions, is there any update on the refugee council?
Did you? I'm sorry, it broke when you
said refugee council. I think. Is there any update on the refugee?
Oh, okay. No, there is not. I can check in with Justin to see where we are, but there has not. I saw a reference in, I don't know, in the ERA report, but I have not seen or heard anything else about the development or advancement of that council. Okay. We are set and done. Okay. Well, thank you all. Have a great balance of the day and certainly a great balance of the week. When do I get to see you again? Thursday? Is that it? I can hardly wait. Okay.
Wednesday.